Okay, so I'm Matt. I'm going to talk about UI code, mostly XAML. I perked up when David mentioned XAML, and he kind of messed with my head a little bit, because I was going to point out that it's at least 5 years since someone from Microsoft has stood on stage anywhere and talked about, we're going to do things with XAML to make it better. I don't really care about XAML. What I care about is the tools I use to build software. And for my UI, that is mostly XAML. So I don't want the fact that I have this, which is the first ever book on XAML. It came out 19 years ago this month, before WPF even came out. This is still mostly relevant. That's not a good thing. Can you imagine using a C# book from 19 years ago and it being relevant and useful? Can you imagine the examples in a C# book from 19 years ago being the same code examples we still use and people teach today? I really hope not. The code example in this is you click a button, a counter goes up. Where have you seen that? That's really worrying. Oh, sorry, new clicker, it goes the other way. So here is some XAML. It is from an official Microsoft sample. It probably looks like most of the XAML you've seen and you write. Agreed? Some nods, good. You need to be more interactive, it's really going to help. So you'll probably agree then that this is verbose, hard to work with, hard to maintain, hard to read, hard to write. Yes, so I think this sucks. I think it is hard to change, it's hard to maintain. It has an inability to provide maintainer confidence, and it's just generally terrible. I would like to refer to this as poopy XAML. I do not write poopy XAML. The XAML I write does not look like this. I will show you some of that. But you are smart people. We are here at an expert MAUI day. You're clever people. You're paid to write code. There are people in this room who are genuine experts, recognized as such. They write training courses, they write books, they make videos showing how to make XAML. But I don't get why we're still doing the poopy XAML. So I'm hoping that you're all smarter than me to understand why we're doing that. I've tried to figure it out. I can't work out if it's bad, but maybe everyone else recognises it's bad and the ways to fix it are obvious, so we don't even need to mention it. But if that was the case, why is everyone writing poopy XAML? Maybe everyone just likes complaining and XAML got the short straw. But it's the thing we're using every day. This is the thing we're making careers with. This is what we're building products with. This is what we're making our livelihoods with. Wouldn't it be nice if it was better? And yes, it would be nice if it was better. Maybe I'm the only person who's thought about this, and that's really scary, because there are millions of people who have used XAML. And yes, lots of people quickly recognise that it could be better, but why is no one going, yeah, and so what do we do about it? If I was a manager or a tech lead, and a developer came along and said, oh, we're going to use this thing, it's not very good, but we're using it anyway. It has all these issues, we're going to use it anyway. I would have questions. Why are you using that? What alternatives have you looked at? Are there alternative ways of using it that address some of those issues? You've asked those questions yourselves, haven't you? Maybe it's just good enough. But if it's good enough, why do we complain? Why do we pick on XAML? Maybe we just assume that because we're doing the same thing as everybody else, it must be the right thing to do. And the average of the internet is always great, isn't it? Maybe we've just only ever seen XAML done one way, and so we don't think about it being anywhere else. We can't imagine it being any different. But tech is always about something new and doing things in different and better ways. So why not XAML? What if it could be different? Maybe MAUI overall is just so good that we don't care about XAML. Maybe I've got so familiar with it, I've got contempt, but everyone else has just got like a preference for it, because this is what we see, this is what we know, we're happy with it. I see this every day, I see this everywhere, I live with it. And maybe you just don't want to change, because change is hard. And don't worry, that was the last Taylor Swift reference. Maybe it's just an acceptable level of technical debt, like having a credit card. We know the XAML's not going to be great, but we use it anyway. Like, I put things on my credit card, I know I'm going to have to pay with interest, I just live with it, that's life, we get on with it. If this was my credit card, it would be on fire, I tried to get AI to produce me a picture of a credit card on fire, and it said it wouldn't do it because it was threatening and dangerous. So AI is going to save us from ourselves and silly images. But seriously, I want to know what you've done about this other than complain. I don't want to accept that I'm the only person who's thought about doing this differently. This is your in and out. Oh yes, question.
I use a web view.
You use a web view. Okay, so you choose not to use XAML essentially. Okay, and lots of people go, I don't like XAML, I will use Blazor, and we'll come back to them in a bit. But your silence is deafening. So I'll tell you what, I'll show you what I've done, and then I hope I encourage you to show me what you've thought about, or talk about what you thought about, and hopefully that's not a violation of the code of conduct. So you probably, if you've thought about any alternative other than a web view, probably involves C#. And some people do. There was no official documentation figures on how many people use C# instead of XAML, so I tried to work it out. Fortunately, I have some data. From my data, from the last tens of thousands of apps, about just under 6% of people are using C# as opposed to XAML. If I use NuGet data, being as generous as I can to the MAUI markup languages, maybe 12% of people are using C# to write their UIs. So less than 1 in 8 are using C#, so the vast majority of people are using XAML, just like yourselves, and yet we all agree it's rubbish. Maybe we should do something about it. Let's talk about C# markup. C# markup is brilliant. This is from the community toolkit, MAUI markup, sample app, how to use C# to create your UI. Isn't it wonderful? Because it's C#. Okay, but it kind of just looks like the same structure I would have used in XAML, but in a different syntax. And actually, if I convert that to XAML, indenting on the same lines as they've done, wrapping things on the same lines as they've done, it's less code. Ooh. And actually, I look at this and go, there are all sorts of issues with that XAML code. It could be so much better, and so could the C# markup. So maybe the issue isn't the syntax, it's how we're using it. I also have some concerns about C# markup because they say it's fluent. Fluent means it's easy to use and consistent and intuitive. But just because there are some methods, some fluent method chaining available for some properties doesn't mean it's actually fluent, because some properties you have to set as properties. Some properties there are little helper methods you can call. Some of the helper methods have different names to the properties, which is confusing. And sometimes you just have to fall back to using this bind method. And if you don't know what you're doing, it's really hard to work it out. As someone who's not as smart as you, I admit it's really hard to work out. And it might be that the rest of the world thinks it's easy, but if I have to fall back to using bind, I look at the syntax, and this is one of the simpler bind methods. I just look at that and go, no, that's too scary, I don't know what to do, I will look at something else. I do use C#. I do use C# markup. So what we have here is part of some code for the UI and part of the rendered UI. At the top, how I would do a label. The style takes care of most everything. And then I set a resource for the text and a resource for the tooltip. And I do the same thing for the subheading, which is the line underneath. That single one line is how I do it now. So I'm automatically generating a type based on my style, and I'm automatically generating some magic code based on my resource files to do the loading of that. What that looks like under the hood, this is the magic one. So this is my resource file, and you see it's got a weird syntax. It's got an underscore thing. It's my special thing for splitting up between an identifier and the property where we're going to set this value. So when I compile, I have a little build step that goes, oh, I see you're using styles, let me generate some classes for you. I see you're using resources, let me generate some automatic resource loading for you. Here's some automatic resource loading. It's massive because there's loads of different types and loads of different properties, but it's generated so I don't care. And I can build and I can work with C#. And you can use it if you really, really don't like angle brackets, fine. If you're productive, fine, you use it. I have some criticisms, some questions, some challenges to the standards. We won't go into those because my biggest question is, Why does no other language and UI language fall back to doing everything in a single language? Why does everyone else use a markup and a different language for the code behind, or the equivalent thereof? Even the people who go, well, I'm just going to do everything in a web browser, or I'm going to use Blazor because I don't like XAML. If you're using Blazor, you've still got HTML in your Razor files, along with your C#. I don't think there is a magic in everything is in one language. I think it's about how you use them. I don't think the choice between XAML and C# is a real choice. It is not about, do you take this red medicine or do you take this red medicine? Do you sit in this camp? It's not medicine, they're sweets and you're supposed to have them together. It's not red or blue, it's purple. It's lovely. All like the purple on your hoodies. Isn't that good? Yes, XAML and C#. You've joined the middle ground, I like it. So, what if we treat XAML like a proper programming language? Not, oh, it's XAML, it doesn't matter. We'll treat it like everything else. Do the things which we want from any programming language. Easy to read, easy to write, clear, succinct, maintainable, all those sort of things. Actually, I don't mean programming language, I mean anything where a human looks at or enters text into a file and then that gets compiled away. Because if we're at that abstraction level, how is XAML different to C#? I am a person typing, maybe with IntelliSense, maybe with something else, putting text in a file, that file gets turned into a part of the code in an application somewhere. Let's treat everything like that. I've had the opportunity to talk about this at a number of places, and one of the first places I did that, someone came up afterwards and said, I've never seen XAML done well before. My question to you is, when have you ever seen XAML done well? You've looked at that and gone, oh, that's good XAML. Isn't that a red flag?
What's good XAML?
So I asked this question, what would people consider good XAML? The only person who's ever come back and said what good XAML is, they argued that it was formatted well. If that's your bar, we have bigger issues. But if your bar for good code is consistent formatting, we have problems. I'm going to show you some things, or mention some things, which you already do in all the other programming languages you use. So why don't we use them for XAML? It's text in a file. I'm going to give you some homework and shortcut to save time. So you might recognize this as the MAUI monkey app that you build if you do the .NET workshop. If you did that a long time ago, you might not know, but there is now a XAML version of that, a community module extension, you can find it there, and that will show you how to take the XAML that you create with that application, apply some of those principles I was mentioning, what makes it good, and make it good. And you go from having XAML that looks like this, which is obviously massive and verbose and doesn't fit on the screen, and if we squeeze it all onto one screen, it still looks like that, which is still just too much code for 7 items on a screen. And we can go through the steps in the workshop, which will show you how to apply formatting, remove duplication, and use better naming, encapsulate logic. If you have a big file or big method in C#, are you going to break that up, split that up, encapsulate some logic, pull out some methods, pull out some other classes? Probably. Let's do that with XAML as well. Break the coupling. If you've got margins and padding all over the place, that should be a red flag, because if you've got margins and padding all over the place, don't you find it hard to change things? Yes. So we go from that to this. Much shorter, fewer elements, fewer properties needed. It produces exactly the same output. It's understandable. I've shown this to people who have never seen XAML before and asked them, how would you make a change to do X? And they were like, oh yeah, I'll just do that. Because it is really readable and therefore really maintainable. I took out the comments, we don't need comments. I've able to add in white space to make it easier to read, and it's still better. It's still shorter than what we had before. So XAML, XAML. I think people in their heads forget about the X. The X is extensibility, okay? And so 2 really simple ways that are built in and native to XAML for extensibility are attached properties and markup extensions. And if we use them, we can do some powerful things. We can go from, horrible gesture recognizer as nested elements, to just as an attached property. It's like a dozen lines of code at most. And it makes the code so much easier to read. Do it for other gesture recognizers. That event's a command behavior. That's an awful lot of code for one thing. Oh no, just make an attached property. And actually we can have that called a command rather than an event, which we then have to turn into a command. Simple. Or if we could give it shorter names, because shorter names are better. Or we could give it more meaningful names, like on clicked. Well, okay, I know what that's going to do. That's an awful lot of code, isn't it? For 3 bits of text. That's much nicer, that's much easier to change. It's harder to get that wrong. Just an attached property. They're really easy. Here's 3 bits of text. Some of them are changed with a converter. So the top one's the original, no converter. Then the second one, obviously we've got this, it's using a static resource converter, another converter. But then let's just turn the converter into a markup extension. The text is on average about 60% shorter for that line, and it's much more easy to read. And I created that just by saying, hey converter, just turn yourself into, or create a attached property for this converter. No, create a markup extension for this converter and give it this name, or I could give it parameters and do all sorts of things, and it spits out an extension. It's just a wraparound of binding which automatically applies the converter. When I first saw this, it was like scales being taken off my eyes, because it's so easy to do. Why has no one been doing it? Why has nobody showed me this before? And we can do other things. David earlier was talking about, so David earlier threw me when he mentioned new XAML stuff. But he talked about getting rid of XML namespace aliases. Well, rather than get rid of them, I like to use them to make the code more readable and more meaningful. Show when has errors. What do you think that means? What do all these things mean? If true, no binding property name converter bool to visibility converter. Show if true is really simple, really easy to use. What if I didn't have to specify the two-way binding as a separate parameter or something? Just make a version of binding which is always two-way binding. What else have we got? What did I skip over? I don't know. Two gradients. What's the difference? The code used to create them. One big and horrible, and I can never remember what offsets mean and what endpoints and start points are. And one anyone can understand, because a horizontal gradient with a left and a right is pretty clear. I've got vertical gradients, I've got positive diagonal gradients, negative diagonal gradient, and circular gradient, center and then outside, all that sort of thing. It's just so easy. So we can do things, we can change the formatting, separate out the content. A lot of this stuff is in the workshop, which I'm skipping over. Sorry, you've got homework if you care. Getting rid of magic values, because C#'s great, you don't have all these magic strings everywhere, but it's still listed with numbers, and having magic numbers everywhere is not good for C# or XAML, or any programming language. We can do those, we can get rid of those magic numbers in XAML just as we can in C#. And do some extension stuff. Wonderful. But what about switching our thinking from, I've got some XAML, I want to work with it, let's make creating XAML projects easier. I've got a few things which will make creating XAML easier. So the first one is the MAUI App Accelerator. It's a wizard for creating new apps. And rather than just a file new, you get a single page, or you get file new and you get all the SyncFusion sample stuff, you can build the app you actually want. So you obviously choose you want to use .NET 9. You can say whether you want to use MVVM, you want to do everything in code behind, or if you want to do things in C# markup. You can choose if you want the shell, and if you want the shell, do you want tabs or do you want flyouts? What pages do you want in it? Multiple pages from the get-go. What do you want them to be named? Do you want them to have content? They can have some default content if you want. What other things do you need? What libraries do you want to include from the get-go? Jumpstart your application much faster. Get everything wired up. I don't have to worry about, how do I add this new page into the shell and wire up the view model, because all that registration's done for me, all the data binding stuff's done for me, all the initialization for my libraries. I don't have to go into MAUI program.whatever and change all that. Tool takes care of it for me. Yes, you can do that stuff yourself, but why bother? There's some more. And in the next version, which is coming out hopefully next week, I've been on holiday, so it's taken a bit longer than I thought, you can add stuff to existing apps. So I've already built my app. Obviously, you want to know what you're building before you start, but it's typical to have to add stuff to an app. So if I want to add a page, I go in and add page, and I'll choose what type of page I want, and then it will show me that it's going to add a thing into my app shell to make it, give it a tab or give it an entry or whatever. It's going to wire up all the bindings for me into my existing app. I don't have to do that myself, because why should I? Because a tool can. But then maybe when we're in our app and we want to create the XAML, we could type everything ourselves, or I built this version of the toolbox, which is just a little bit smarter. So I drag on a refresh view, and it gives me more than just the element, and it's going to set the cursor in an appropriate place. So I can drag on a collection view, and it doesn't just give me an empty collection view element. It's going to create the item template and a data template in an empty view version, and it's going to set the cursor in the data template. So what I can do is then just start clicking on things, and they're going to get added into my data template. It's not the final code, but it's much easier to change something which is pretty much there than it is to go from nothing. And that's quite fast. That saves me a lot of time. I have what I think is the fastest way of creating XAML, useful, relevant, appropriate XAML. And the way it works is what you do is you grab your view model and you just drag it onto the view. And then what it does is it looks at that class in that view model, looks at all the properties, looks at their types and their names, and is smart and is configurable about what it outputs based on that. So here in my view model I have like some commands, so it creates buttons which execute the commands. I have a collection view of a type. I have an observable collection of a type, so it gives me a collection view. It looks at the properties of that type and gives me entries in the item data template to jumpstart me on that. It's much faster, and that's good, and I get some code. So David earlier said that code highlights and tooltips and extensibility of the quick info providers and the light bulbs doesn't exist in XAML, and I didn't like they didn't exist, so I built a thing so now it can exist. So I can, before I even compile and have the compiler warn me about stuff, the editor's going, oh, you've got this type, you probably need to add this property. You haven't thought about this. What about this? You're using something appropriate. And it has the fixes in as well. So I can go, oh, right click, fix this. Right click, add this property. I didn't even need AI for that. And it's extensible. So for my custom types, I can build really simple things, like you might build a Rosin analyzer, but much easier to do that for XAML as well. So there's a lot of stuff. But, you know, I'm old and I'm grumpy and I'm not easily satisfied. So I want more. The solution to I want more is typically, well, AI will do it for you, won't it? You know, AI is great because AI can generate me my XAML, which it does based on the average of the internet, so we know that's going to be great. If I don't understand it, I can ask AI to explain it to me. But I'd imagine pretty soon there'll be an agent somewhere which can just change it to whatever I want. So I can say, hey, AI, Copilot, whatever, make this XAML, and then change it to do something else. We've taken out the humans. It doesn't matter what the XAML looks like, because AI is only ever going to look at it. But I don't think that's real or practical anytime soon, and people are going to have to look at the code, so we need to think about looking at the code and making it better for people. Acceptable? The thing about XAML, it was originally created for tools to use. It wasn't intended that we would ever type it. And spoiler, I am not a robot. What I want from XAML and the code and the text in files that I look at is not the same thing as a tool or a machine wants. So I've painted a pretty bad picture. Why don't we just replace it with something else? Well, replacing it with something else would be hard. Okay, so most of MAUI is open source, not the cool, interesting bits which integrate with Visual Studio. Boo. Most of MAUI is open source, and you can see how hard it would be to do something equivalent to XAML but different. It would be a boatload of work. Can you imagine how many people have worked on XAML in MAUI? To recreate something else, that would be shocking. People don't care if it's not from Microsoft, and people are worried about trying things that are not from Microsoft. If we had something new, it wouldn't support existing code bases. It might be great for everything we build in the future, but what about all the stuff we maintain? Do you want to rewrite all the code you already have? Probably not the best use of your time. And if you did, would you be confident that it still did exactly the same thing? Have you got lots of UI tests to verify that? Anyone? What did you build your UI test with? Any good UI frameworks out there? I couldn't find one. I had to build one myself. I won't bore you with that. Obviously something new needs to be easy to learn. And because XAML is more than just MAUI, it would be nice if anything new was more than just MAUI as well and just worked with all XAML. The next slide was I created before David's talk this morning, and I'm really happy to see that Microsoft are starting to look at XAML again. But in general, for the last forever, If you talk to someone at Microsoft about XAML, the response is the same. So that doesn't bode well, does it? But I've been out of work for a while, so it got me thinking. Even though I'm not the smartest guy in the room, I think there's something we can do. I think there's a way that it's not that hard. I know enough about building DSLs and integrating Visual Studio that there is a quick solution. And I can tell you it was low effort because it was about 2 days coding overall to do it. Microsoft aren't going to do it. Fine, I will do it myself. And I will do it in a way which is of low risk to anyone else. You can use this. If it goes away, if you don't like it, you've not wasted any time, you still have everything you had before and more. It will work with existing code bases. It is for humans to read, not machines to read, and it will work with any type of XAML because it is that extensible. Oh, it's a panacea, isn't it? Not a panacea, it's ENAMEL. It is the Experimental Native Application Markup Extension Language. And I thought it was a really good name. It's not the first name I believe in, I'll tell you. Believe me. Words, you know, put them together, make it mean something. Here's the good thing. You know how they claim this? If you're a XAML developer, you're automatically an ENAMEL developer. Because ENAMEL transpiles to XAML, so you get the same thing you've had previously, and it works with all the existing toolchain. So even when they come in and do XAML source chain in the future, sounds great, low-level debugging improvements, brilliant Microsoft, do that all day for me, I'll take that. But because this sits on top of XAML, I get all that benefit for free. Also, it accepts XAML as an input. So I can take a XAML file, copy it into an ENAMEL file, and you'll get exactly the same thing out. I can take a XAML file, maybe I want to try this out, I can change parts of it, leave some parts as XAML, and I still get the same thing out. My ENAMEL files, if they go away, if this is just a me being fun experiment, I've still got all the XAML files or versions of XAML files I would have written anyway. I haven't lost anything. I can integrate it with existing projects on a case-by-case basis. If I don't know how to do something in ENAMEL but I can do it in XAML, fine, just use the XAML version. It is highly configurable, but comes with smart defaults, and that's how it works cross-platform. Totally optional, like I said. You can use it for part of a project, all of a project, none of a project. You could have multiple people working on a code base, some of them using ENAMEL as well, some of them not. It's not just different, it's not just the same thing in a different syntax. It is intentionally better, and I think it's awesome because I'm still blown away by it. I know what it does, and it surprises me how good it is still. Right, spoiler, quick in. On the left is ENAMEL, on the right is XAML, exactly the same output. I know you get the same output because the XAML on the right was created from the ENAMEL. We will dig into the details. But you can see it is shorter, it is more readable. I've got spacing where I haven't got spacing in the XAML to make it nice and clear. Lots of less horrible, no angle brackets. No angle brackets? I think I took them all out of that one. That is the start page you get in a new project. Yes?
Why have you chosen to still use XAML?
I'll tell you why, you can have a pen for asking a question. Congrats. I've used XName because
As opposed to name?
Because what I did is I started from that XAML which was given to me. I wouldn't write that page on the right the way Microsoft do, so I was just trying to copy. I have a feature which means you can happily ignore that if you wish. Okay. What I'm trying to do is produce XAML, and this is trying to show I'm making XAML as similar to the XAML you would write yourself or was written previously. So the basics are no angle brackets, no closing elements, Children are indented, siblings are indented the same. Spaces, tabs, whatever you want, that's up to you, just be consistent. Oh look, little ellipsis I will draw attention to. The generated XAML has no namespaces. I've just hidden them because it would take up loads of space on the screen. But I have a settings file where I can specify some namespaces which automatically get added to every class that you generate. So I can specify them once. I don't have to look at them in the source, they're there and hidden, or got hidden from me. And I can make them consistent across my entire application. Because who hasn't been in that position where, oh, this alias is a different alias on a different page, or this alias is used for a different type on another page. And it's just a headache you shouldn't have to deal with and probably don't want to deal with. And we can generate the class name for you as well. You know, Visual Studio will tell me what the namespace should be based on your settings, and I'll take the class name from the file name because that's a convention we all use. If you don't like that everything's indented, you can have curly braces. Properties, you set them just like you would in XAML. Name equals, property name equals property value. Can be on the same line, can be on the next line and indented, or a combination thereof. So things on the left produce the things on the right, I should have said. Because it's written for humans, we don't have to put quotes around everything if we don't need to. So if your value doesn't have a space in it, quotes are optional. We can set default properties. So on almost every label, I'm setting the text. So why do I have to write text? I can define the default property for text, for label is text. Therefore, the first property after the name, after the element name, if it doesn't have a property name, we just assume it's the text. And so we can just go from hello text equals hello in brackets to get rid of the text. We can just do the text, label hello. That's really nice, simple code. Really understandable. Doesn't even look like code, it's so simple. Or I like code that doesn't look like code. Do you ever have multiple properties you all set to the same value? Well, let's just concatenate them. Makes my code a little bit simpler, a little easier. I can do comments. I can comment out individual properties, which people frequently ask for in XAML. Oh, I just want to remove this property, I'm trying something out while debugging, and then I change something else, and I try something else, and I've forgotten all the things I've tried, and my undo stack is messed up, I can't use that to go back and work out what I've tried. Well, just try it, and then comment it out, and you've got the history, so you can see what you did. Markup expressions are lovely, but I look at some pages, and it's just binding everywhere. So let's have a default. If you don't specify the markup extension in your markup expression, it will be whatever the configured default is, so I can lose all the binding name. I can go from the horrible long version at the top to the label squiggly brackets name. Squiggly brackets mean something obviously, and we still get the same output. Yes, question?
So does your ENAMEL editor also just, so I'm a cautious developer, right?
Yeah.
Does your ENAMEL editor also just accept a XAML file as it is? Will it understand that?
Yeah.
So I can maybe start off like, I just want to have comments.
Yeah.
So I'll just do that.
So what I can do it, I can take a XAML file, paste it into the .enamel file,
Yeah.
and it will spit out exactly the same thing. The parser goes, does this look like XAML? Does it start with an angle bracket? Is XAML, spit it out exactly as it is.
So, but I can also edit that.
So I can edit that. So the thing I do, first element, or XML prologue, nuke that. We'll add that automatically. Top level root element, nuke all those namespaces, get rid of all that, we don't need that. Get rid of the angle bracket, get rid of the closing bracket, good to go.
But let's say, God forbid, I like angle brackets.
If you like angle brackets,
It's fine, I guess.
it's fine, yeah. So aliasing and substitution. If you don't like long names, because who likes typing vertical stack layout? VSL. Define some substitutions, define some aliases, have it spit out, apply to properties as well. Question at the back.
Yes, like in the previous slide, maybe you looked with next property.
Oh, hang on.
Property name for your anything.
How am I?
See the bottom label.
Yeah.
Text attribute.
Yeah, because it's just a property. So the thing after an element name, elements are all on their own lines. So the thing after an element name is probably going to be a property. It doesn't have an equal sign. therefore it's the default property. Doesn't include space, doesn't have quotes, therefore it's not got any spaces to worry about, therefore the whole thing. So that gets expanded up to that, gets expanded up to that, gets expanded up to that internally, essentially. Yeah, it's like shockingly simple, it can't work, but it works. And whoever types semantic properties description, semdesk, lovely. Who likes creating data template elements inside their XAML? It's just an extra level of nesting you don't need, because my item template almost always has a data template inside it. So I just have a configuration option where I can say, if you see a child element item template, replace it with item template and put a data template inside that as well. The two things on the left produce the thing on the right. So when I've got a child element, I don't need to really repeat the element's name. I'll just prefix with a dot and have it expand out. Forget that this is new. Would you rather write or read the thing on the bottom left or the thing on the right? Grids are a pain, unless you really need them. Often you just need a simple grid where I go a grid with some rows, you know, auto star to fill up the bottom. And then you have to go and enter all the row numbers, and then something changes and you have to faff with changing a load of things, because grids are like that. So I just said, well, let's make auto grid a magic word. We'll replace it with grid, and then we'll just, based on the row defs and column definitions, assign rows and columns to all the children. So now, if I wanted to add a fifth label, I could just add an extra row definition or column definition and add the label, and I don't have to worry about, well, what about the other ones relative to it? Am I putting it above it or below it, and what other numbers have to change? Let's get really clever. Let's have some for loops. Because why not? Sometimes you need lots of things that are the same. Sometimes you need to build a calculator and have buttons 1 to 9 in a 3x3 grid. Yes, you can cut and paste. It's so simple, you can work out what it does. Even the one at the bottom, look, you can use any identifier, you can use any numbers, multiple replacements. See, this is the really blew my mind when it works. Label $XX, it knows it's going to put whatever the number in the for loop is in there as the default property, as the value for the text property, because that's the default. And then remembering back to my lovely purple sweeties, because why not, let's inline some C# as well. So only really simple C#. So you put it inside the property value with additional @sign delimiters, so we know that what's in this property is some code, because you wouldn't have @signs there otherwise. And rather than try and be clever and do some compiler nonsense, I'm not trying to be clever, I can't be clever, but I can spit out XAML, I can spit out some C# partial classes. So I'll just turn whatever you put there into whatever gets called by the event. Which means, well, this is saying do something. That could be like viewModel.command, and I've got event to commands without having to bring in anything else. And because Visual Studio is lovely, and I love Visual Studio, it just magically nests all the stuff for us. So I wrote the .enamel, it output the enamel.cs is my magically created inline CS stuff. Mainpage.xaml, just like mainpage.xaml. Mainpage.xaml.cs, your regular code behind file. You can put stuff in there if you want. Visual Studio works with this fine. It doesn't know what to do with enamel files, it just ignores them. And that's what you want, that's what makes this optional. This is all design time stuff. So I write the code, save it, it spits out XAML. When I compile, when the background process runs, tries to build the code, it's looking at the XAML, it's not looking at what the thing I've put on top. And that means all the tooling still works the same. If I want to create things with, so the source gen will still work the same, all the compiler warnings will still work the same because they're looking at the XAML. My extensions which do things and look at the XAML, they also work because the XAML file is still there, still all the same. And not just for proof of concept, but I have a real app. You can tell it's a real app, it's got animation in it. You click on it's like a to-do app, but it's the to-do app for tasks you do every day. So every day it's new and it tracks trends and streaks and things. And when you've done everything, you get a nice little animation. And it works. Code in the middle is the enamel, code on the right is the XAML. That's it running in an emulator to prove it runs. And the thing about animation, which I don't know if Jean-Marie said, because I missed some of his talk, there is a setting on all your devices which says turn off animation. And so for my app, I wanted to not have animation. If someone had said, well, I don't want animation, it hurts my eyes, messes with my head, for whatever reason. So I built a little plugin using Gerald's plugin template, which goes and looks it up. And so it's like one line to tell if you should be showing animations or not. So that's good. Nice accessibility feature. Guy's going to talk more about accessibility later. Continuity, isn't it great? Okay, give me a moment. I've got a few minutes. Here's Visual Studio. Yes, Visual Studio. On the left. Too excited. On the left, Enamel, inside Visual Studio, some simple colouring. It's not brilliant, but it's enough to give you an idea. Like I said, I only spent 2 days on this. We'll zoom in a bit just to show you some other things. So here we have my vertical stack layout. It could just be VSL. You see it's got some properties, and you see that spacing's commented out. Here's the equivalent thing in the XAML file. So what I can do is I can come to my Enamel file, I can remove that comment, save it, and in the yellow, it automatically got updated. That's good. No. So it's not trying to keep the two things in sync. It's saying, I want a simpler way to define my UI. I'll spit out XAML because MAUI knows about XAML. MAUI can deal with that. You could cut and paste from one side to the other, but it's not. Trying to keep two things in sync is too clever for me. I'm not smart, remember. You could do it. You can tell me how to do it, and that'd be good. So that's good. So I've got this lovely file, and so here's the enamel, and you get an idea for what it might look like. But what does it really look like? Am I confident what it really looks like? Do I have to compile and run to know what it looks like? I'm really short on time, so I'm gonna.
Speech away.
Yeah. Okay. What does it look like? Compile it, run it, see? No! I've got a little preview up. This is inside Visual Studio. I've not compiled it or anything. This is just gone, well, what does this look like as a gist? I call it a pre-visualization. It's not great for everything. It doesn't pretend to be. You'll still want to run your app, see it on different devices, check that it works exactly as you expect. But what this gives me is I have confidence that I've not done something stupid. So I don't have that, oh, I've built my app, I've deployed it, it looks very, very wrong, and now I feel I've just wasted some time. So sometimes I'm quite good at using grids when I should have used a stack layout. And obviously, well, I know that's wrong because I've just got a button covering the whole screen. Or maybe, let's see what Alias is doing. Or I put everything in a horizontal stack layout. That's probably not right. That's better. Or I can look at that, and before I've even compiled, I know something's wrong because my buttons aren't all the same width. So I could set a style on it or something, but I see here we've hard-coded the fill thing, so let's do that. Let's do it on both of them. I haven't even yet compiled, and I'm being super productive. You know when you develop it in a loop, you want to shift left, do things earlier, because it saves time and is faster. I'm writing Enamel, I'm pre-visualizing everything, I'm super productive. Come talk to me later, we'll look at some other things if you want to look more at code. Let's see if this works. No? What can you see? What can you see? Okay. So pre-visualization, it's just simple up front. It's not everything, it's an additional tool. It saves me loads of time, it's really useful. Don't need to worry about having real data or having design time data. It just looks at the types and the controls and just, you know, if you've got a binding, it'll say a binding value would go here, that sort of thing. Works for Enamel and XAML. So what that's really doing is looking at the XAML. Enamel spits out XAML, my visualizer looks at the XAML, it's lovely, but obviously still test on real devices. I told someone that AI wouldn't give you Enamel, even though AI is the future and it's going to do everything for us. But then I thought I should probably check, so I asked ChatGPT, ChatGPT came back with some general principles about how to make XAML better, but obviously didn't give us anything all that great. Some of the things made sense, some of the things I was less convinced by. It said switch to using CSS for all XAML. No. You know, it said use functional programming principles, but its justification was just general good programming principles. So yeah, we can do that. Okay, so that was a lot. But at the beginning, I asked you what you're doing. I'll show you what I was doing. The best case scenario is you come back and go, no, that's all nonsense. Matt, you've wasted your time, but we haven't wasted any time beyond 45 minutes because we already know we're doing the best things. We have our own tools, we have our own things which make it good. We are happy with our lives as they are. The worst case scenario is you think this is amazing because it means everybody's been doing everything wrong for all their lives. Well, while they've been writing XAML. The reality might be somewhere in between, but this stuff is a pain to support, and it's not the kind of thing that gets lots of open source contributions. So some of the things I've shown you are open source, and they are public and available. Some of them are open source and publicly available, but not documented. So you could use them, but you'd have to look at the code to work out how. And some of the things are private just because, you know, some of the things are private. But I remember at the beginning, I said, I want you to tell me what you're doing, what you're thinking about. It would be really easy for you to clap now, time's run out, we just clap to acknowledge the end of time in the session, and everyone goes, well, that was a nice entertainment for 45 minutes, we will move on into whatever comes next. That's not what I want. I want to start a discussion of how do we make this better. Microsoft has said they're now doing a few things. I think it would be quite easy to go a lot further, a lot faster. If this has blown your mind, obviously keep thinking, don't take time to clap. If you think this is nonsense, obviously keep quiet. If you have questions, there will be time in the break. I'm not going anywhere all day. Come and talk to me, ask questions, that would be wonderful. I think that's officially time now. More music to end. So this is where it's fine. Okay, you can go and get drinks now. Good.